their attitude towards you and understanding of you never changes. The other choice is to constantly fight, and that's not a winning algorithm. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. The topic considered today is the Frozen Narcissist as a 6-year-old vampire child. Frozen in time, frozen in space. This is an important topic because it will have significant impact on those around the narcissist that cannot get away from the narcissist, whether you're co-parenting, whether you're in a marriage you can't get away from, whether you're in a business relationship or other family dynamics where they are there regularly and you are attempting to move forward with life and you have to secure certain relationships because walking away can be disastrous. Let's get started. The narcissist as a 6-year-old vampire, frozen in time, frozen in space. This should resonate with you. What am I talking about? What you have to understand is, again, as I've said before, there is no time, space, which couches events in our life, events for me that have an impact on my neural networks, and I change from those events, okay? And we have a collective agreement on what is space and what is time. Hey, this set of events happened on that day. Now, they may be insignificant events, but over the long run, all of these events form who you are, create a narrative for your life, and change you, hopefully, for the better. Not always, but most of the time. And so, as you're growing up, there's the most significant amount of change during those significant developmental years. Even as an adult, unless if you're got something wrong with you or you are a narcissist, you see somebody from several years later or several months later, there are significant events that happen in their lives that impacts who they are, and you can see the change. You could see the change in the way they dress, maybe their health, and maybe exercise, maybe their values, maybe their views, but you do see adults changing throughout life. The narcissist is really stuck in some bizarre, strange place, probably at the emotional maturity of a 6-year-old, and they cannot escape that. So imagine when you see, I forgot the name of the movie, but there was a movie some time ago with Tom Cruise, I think, was in it, and one of the characters was this young, small child that had been turned into a vampire, okay? And as the years went by, the personality of that child, the development of that child, the maturity of that child, and how it impacts them morally, conceptually, who and what they are, and how they maintain themselves in the world, and how they see the world, it never changed. And, you know, at some point, this particular child, I think, became very bored with it. But what she did was spend her entire life frozen in that 6-year-old vampire-ish mode without any maturity or growth. And the only thing that she lived for was feeding. Sort of like narcissistic supply. All she did was feed day in and day out. And in that empty pursuit, there is no emotional growth. There is no psychological growth. There is no physical growth by virtue of being a vampire. There are no changes that add to the narrative by experience of who she is. And in fact, that vampire child also has a different concept and perception of time and space, which impacts her growth and narrative. Now, I'm using this sort of as a prop to get you to understand. Think about the narcissist that you know, and I'm talking about pathological narcissists. If you really think about it, over the time that you've known this person, they too are sort of stuck in this weird, bizarre place without any significant changes in their personhood. They sort of repeat the same thing, Groundhog's Day. They approach ideas in the same childish, destructive manner that never gives them a positive answer. Groundhog's Day. Their attitude towards you and understanding of you never changes. It's sort of fixed in this weird, bizarre place, and it's processed again in a very immature fashion. In fact, I would say if you're watching really closely over time, their food habits, their professional habits, the things they do in the world, their dress habits, nothing changes. Look closely. So if you are someone that is stuck in this kind of situation, and let me add one more thing. In addition to that, how they present themselves, how they sort of say terrorize that particular individual that they have a hold on in the long run depends on their stress response. The 6-year-old child vampire is sort of the same thing. They can look cute, right? They can look sort of not dangerous. They can engage sort of in a seemingly normal manner. But when it comes time to feeding, or if there's a stress response, in that case, hunger, they can become a ferocious beast. And those of you that are stuck in these situations, observe that. Look closely. It's this thing that mimics a person that is sort of stuck. Now, the concern I have in this video and the reason I'm putting it out is not necessarily how the narcissist feels and so on, and if they feel horrible actually, but if you can understand what this is and what is going on, your expectations of any change, any positive growth, any emotional, psychological, or moral stability in their behavior should cease. You should have zero expectations and plan and execute your life in an attempt to try and keep them at bay without them causing too much harm, without you trying to cause them any harm, and move forward. Because most people in a situation where they can't walk away have essentially 3 choices, and the third one is the road less traveled, and it's not very much talked about. One choice is, from long-term chronic abuse, the individual or individuals around them throw up their hand and just sort of give in to their fantasy, the fantasy of that 6-year-old child, because the world does change. There are growth, development, changes, and their reality is just sort of stuck. And so the person that has been trying to fight this over some time and they can't get out, throws up their hands and eventually gets sucked in and just says whatever and lives that life, often accompanied by their own substance abuse to be able to cope, by their own history of trauma and healing, and they're just kind of there and they continue to walk the eggshells. The other choice is to constantly fight, and that's not a winning algorithm. You will not win. And remember, you're there because you're stuck there. And you're stuck there because maybe it's, there's deep family ties and obligations and commitments to children, loved ones, finances, business. You can't go anywhere. Well, if you're stuck there, you better learn to not fight, because you're not doing anything, right? You're not creating anything where you can move forward in a positive way. And again, one of the consequences of that is your own frightening, sad mental health deterioration, including depression, anxiety, substance abuse, and physical manifestations of that. But there's a third way. And that third way is really, I won't get into the psychotherapeutic ways to achieve this, but I will give sort of a phenomenological moral, social description of this. The third way is to engage with them. Don't push their buttons. Have a sense of humanity for them to the extent that you can, but have zero expectations of their change or contribution. Always remember that they can snap and become a vicious hound when it comes time for feeding, just like the 6-year-old, and proceed that way. That is the road least traveled, because otherwise you yourself will suffer from the other ways, including potentially substance abuse. That is the way that you should really consider moving about this road if you have to deal with the pathological narcissism anywhere on the spectrum or description once it passes pathological. Hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you soon. Peace. Thank you.